Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar on bank billing statements and bank fee monitoring. If you are here today, there are great chances that your Treasury department has multiple banking relationships across Europe and that tracking bank charges is a challenge. My name is Emmanuel Lecher, and I am responsible for the studies and publication at Redbridge. I am delighted to welcome two Treasury experts, Gaël and Dino, who will explain us how to chart your own path with bank fee analytics. Indeed, bank fee monitoring is an interesting project that creates immediate and long-term value to your Treasury department. Gaël, to briefly introduce you to our webinar participant, I would say that after a career in banking, you have joined 6 years ago Redbridge in Paris to handle the implementation of our bank fee monitoring solution. And if you now have joined the European coverage team, you still remain an expert in deciphering bank fee statements and understanding what's behind a bank billing code. Hello, Gaël.
Hello, Emmanuel. Hello, everyone.
Dino, maybe a small word on you too. You are heading our London office. You are a Treasury advisory and systems expert. You are a socialite, heavily involved in the life of UK's Association of Corporate Treasurers, and you are fully dedicated to build solutions with your clients that have a true business impact. Hello, Dino.
Good morning, Emmanuel. Good morning, everyone.
I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you to both for preparing this webinar on the state of the art of bank fees monitoring. Your presentation should last 20 to 25 minutes and will be followed by a quick Q&A session. If you want to ask your question, it cannot be any simpler. Just use the little Q&A tab on the Zoom console. Maybe just a final word before we start this webinar. For those of you who are not familiar with Redbridge yet, we are a consulting firm that has been working hand in hand with financial departments over the past 20 years on all their payments, treasury, and financing projects. Our offices are in London, Paris, Geneva, Houston, and New York. Redbridge approach mixes expertise, data, and technology. Our dedicated team of experts is convinced that the Treasury business can be facilitated with the help of technology. This is why we have launched 7 years ago a bank fee monitoring solution named HawkeyeBSB. To date, this platform, HawkeyeBSB, has helped monitoring over $2 billion in bank fees. And so all this leads me maybe to the first question that I have. Let me just 1 second. Yeah, for the audience. And the question is, wow, how do you monitor your bank fees? Looks like we have a real problem with that. Okay.
It's now on screen, so,
Oh. No, it looks like I have a problem with my tool. I'm really sorry for this. Okay. Maybe we can kickstart with you, Gaël. Or with you, Dino, please.
Sure, absolutely, Emmanuel. Obviously, once the sort of polling question is fixed, we can probably ask the audience. Basically, we're here today in order to discuss bank fees. And as my quote suggests, in my view, having visibility of bank fees provides the foundation for strong bank relationships while optimizing costs and the treasury operations. Before Gaël dives into the details of bank fee visibility, monitoring and optimization, I wanted to share my own market observations. In my experience, being in Treasury advisory for over 20 years, not many treasurers have visibility of their bank fees, and hence they do not monitor or renegotiate with their banks at regular intervals. For example, say a corporate last negotiated bank fees 5 years ago, based on its transaction volumes at the time. As time moved on, the business might have grown and higher volumes would command lower unit prices. However, lack of a further negotiation not only maintains the corporate in question on a disproportionately higher pricing grid, but on average, many banks would also impose annual price increases that usually average at around 5% per annum, resulting in even higher above market rate fees. Another common issue that may be observed is that if the time of negotiation another common issue that arises is that if at the time of negotiation, an organization agrees fixed fees for a period of a few years, banks may sometimes fail to update all their internal systems on the tenor of the fixed fees agreed in error, in which case at the next blanket fee increase date, fees are revised upwards in contradiction to the agreement in place. Nevertheless, I have also observed that the recent economic conditions of high inflation and interest rate increases forced corporates to become more cost conscious, and bank fees climbed up on the treasurer's priority list. This made more and more treasurers focus on visibility of their bank fees to ensure there are no fee errors remaining undetected and that they pay fair market rates at all times based on their current volumes. At this point, I can see that you've got the polling question on. I can probably pause here, Emmanuel,
Yes,
if you want to run through the polling question.
Yes, absolutely. You know, it was just to say, well, finally, we have the technical issue fixed, and we have the results for the first question from the audience, which was, do you monitor your bank fees? And to a vast majority, 75% of respondents have said yes, but not very frequently, or at least on a very, very limited scope. And so maybe Gael, you could
Emmanuel, I still have, if you want to move to the next slide.
Yeah.
Great. And I think, you know, what we have seen in terms of the polling question, it doesn't come as a surprise. As many of you know, and as Emmanuel highlighted earlier in the webinar, Redbridge has been working on bank fee visibility and optimization for many years. And here are some clients that we have recently worked with in helping them improve their bank relationships through visibility, monitoring, and optimization of their fees. And on that note, Gael, do you want to provide us with some surprising facts that can be uncovered when monitoring bank fees?
Yes, sure, Dino. Thank you. So, if you are participating in this webinar, it's likely because you are curious and interested in finding a solution to efficiently monitor your bank fees. Here are 3 facts that can convince you that it's extremely important to monitor bank fees properly and to allocate time to this purpose. The first fact is called the dark side of the moon. The dark side of the moon, it's all the bank services that you have never been negotiated with your banks. It represents 36% of the number of services charged by banks and 41% in value of the total cash management fees. That makes a lot of services that go unnoticed. Let me now tell you about the second fun fact, the age of Galaxy. I've just said that only 60% of bank services are negotiated with the banks. But even when you have an agreement on a given price for a given services, that doesn't mean you are safe. Indeed, banks typically do not apply negotiated prices to over 60% of the company's bank accounts. The bank sometimes does not have the same understanding as you of the account to be included in the scope, especially if you have new accounts that have been recently added to your initial scope. And now, let me turn to the last fun fact about bank fee monitoring, the speed of the light. Explain how banks are prompt to add and charge new services to your company without telling the Treasury department. It's not something small. Our data shows that those new services can represent up to 25% of the total cash management fees over a 1-year period. To conclude, with these 3 facts, you need to understand that leaving the bank fees unverified can have a substantial financial impact for your Treasury department. Let now me address the topic of the accessibility of bank fee statements. But before this, I think Emmanuel have a question for you.
Once again, let's see if it works this time. Yes. So the question is, do you receive electronic bank fee statements? We will soon have the results. Yes. Okay. Let's see. Maybe once again. Okay, thank you very much for your answers. We can see that today, among the participants to this webinar, 29%, so 1/3, it's very divided, but very encouraging. 1/3 says, yes, I receive electronic bank fee statements from most of my banks. Another 1/3 says, yes, from some, and 40%, well, the other 1/3, but a little bigger, let's say, says, no, I do not receive an electronic bank fee statement. So I think that, Gaël, you have maybe some good news to say.
Yes, yes, thank you, Manu. It's critical to obtain electronic bank fee statement from your banks if you want to digitalize the process of bank fees monitoring. Most companies think their banks cannot provide such electronic bank billing statement. Let's revoke this idea. Today, our bank fee monitoring platform, HawkeyeBSB, receives files from 101 countries and 63 banking groups. HawkeyeBSB users can generally monitor statements representing an average 68% of the scope of accounts they want. BSB files become the norm in the banking industry. All major cash management banks are familiar with formats. When they do not provide an electronic bank billing statement in a given geography, it's only a matter of time. Here are few insights on the number of banks that send BSB files on our bank fee monitoring platform. The United States is the most mature market with a record of 49 banks sending files on our platform. It's divided between 11 global banks and 38 local banks. Just a quick reminder, BSB files are born in the USA, where the first standard for bank services billing, called EDI 822, was implemented 20 years ago. In Europe, the coverage picked up these last 5 years. Today, HawkeyeBSB receives electronic bank fee statement from 25 European countries. The format used here is not EDI, but CAMT86 or TRIT format. On average, each European country is covered by 5 banks. And in total, we receive fillings from around 20 banks in Europe. The number of countries where BSB files is available, as well as the number of banks sending BSB files, is consistently increasing on our platform. Over the past years, the list of banking groups sending BSB files has grown by an average of 14%, while the list of new countries grew by 7%. Furthermore, it's worth noting that when we publish a 0 in this map, that doesn't mean that no file is available. No, that only means that we do not have a client with business operation in this region. So the best way to find out the capacity of your banks to provide BSB files is to ask them. I think it's fair to consider that accessing electronic bank billing statement is not a challenge anymore to automatize bank fee monitoring. From this, let's review the requirements for a successful exploration of the bank fees galaxy. As a prerequisite, your bank fee monitoring tool must accept BSB files in the standard format available, EDI, CAMT, Twist. But ideally, it should also be able to process Excel or PDF files. Data centralization. Your tool must bring all your data together in one place. Data mapping and visualization. Your tool must help you to make sense on the hundreds of lines written on your bank billing statement. For example, it must be able to find and regroup under one umbrella all the lines related to a simple operation, like a wire transfer. Your tool should also allow you to easily compare the services consumed by each bank and their respective price. All this requires a tedious work of mapping and tagging from your solution vendor to provide you with workable and meaningful data. Alarm systems to prevent any drift. The tool must incorporate technology and intelligence with treatment rules to highlight any discrepancies or missing files. At the end, only solution meeting this requirement would be considered as reliable and efficient. Users will save money through the correction of discrepancies and automation of a process. So bank fees must no longer be left unchecked when return on investment is reached in a year or 2 years and a half, as we are seeing with HawkeyeBSB. So, Dino, do you have client experience to share with the audience?
Yes, absolutely, Gael. On that note, I think it might be useful to share some client experience. A few years ago, Page Group PLC, the FTSE 250, has undertaken a bank reorganization, and as a result, they prioritized bank fee visibility and monitoring, hence why they implemented the HawkeyeBSB. After using the tool for 3 years for their global bank fees, Joanna Bonnet, who is the group treasurer and head of sustainability of Page Group, made the comment that you can see on your screen. And I'll just read it out to you. Implementing HawkeyeBSB allowed Page Group to receive oversight of our actual banking charges in a meaningful way, leading to sizable refunds as a result of overcharging. The automated solution allowed us to work with our banking partners in a pragmatic way across our global footprint. With this in mind, Gael, what is your experience? What in your experience do users value most about the HawkeyeBSB?
Thank you, Dino. So here are a few hints on what HawkeyeBSB users like the most with our solution. I would present 6. Visualizing and analyzing the service billed by your banks. It's elementary. It's a good way to track the use of new services and renegotiate their pricing when their weight in the total billing is increasing too fast. Also, it's a useful feature to track services for which your Treasury department has no real use. Number 2, comparing costs per service, bank, entity. Hawkeye's data classification and analysis engine enables clients to compare costs between their banks. They can use the cost per item analysis to benchmark their costs across banks and identify areas for optimization. I have already mentioned in the prior slides the mapping of all billing codes used by bank and necessary to conduct comparisons between banks. Our mapping derives from the classification made by the US Association of Financial Professionals. We use 2 versions of this classification, one used by bank providing EDI and Twist formats called AFP US code. The second one is used by banks providing CAMT 86 and it's called AFP Global Codes. Unfortunately, despite these existing standards, for bank service billings, no bank uses really the same invoice structure. The ReadBridge team constantly analyzes and updates the grid for each of your bank services invoiced. We have also created a bridge between the AFP US and the AFP Global Codes to ensure that all your data is comparable. The ReadBridge team will also classify and enrich all your bank services by providing labels, which will help you to perform an analysis from different angles. Number 3, reducing costs. ReadBridge service tags, which are available in HawkeyeBSB, help to highlight processing errors by analyzing punitive charge across subsidiaries and countries. As well as helping to reduce these costs, Hawkeye also helps to optimize the internal processes behind them. Number 4, optimizing the account structure. Hawkeye identifies idle and closed accounts that are incurring undetected charge. Number 5, saving time. Hawkeye increases the speed, accuracy, and frequency of the bank fees review and helps you to recover money. And the last one, managing banking relationships. You will no longer engage any strategic discussion with your banker without checking at first the size of the cash management business you give them each year. So here are the main features of our bank fee monitoring software, HawkeyeBSB. But there are other ways to explore the bank fees galaxy. Dino, maybe you can tell us a bit more about these offers?
Yes, absolutely, Gael. We have so far focused on our SaaS software tool, the HawkeyeBSB, which is in the middle column of this slide. However, we understand that each corporate has different needs and priorities. Although most of our clients prefer to buy the HawkeyeBSB software tool, there are some organizations that have what I would call IT software fatigue, so to speak. To that effect, we have developed 2 additional services to help these clients with their bank relationships and fees. The first service is our Hawkeye Data Service. This is suitable for organizations that already have tools in place to analyze data, so all they require from us is their bank fee raw data in a CSV file. In this instance, we agree to collect the bank billing information directly from their banks, but before passing the data on to our clients, we perform the following enhancements. Firstly, we check and, if necessary, correct or complete missing AFP codes, as well as for each US AFP code, we provide the corresponding global AFP code and vice versa. That enables our clients to have clean data that can also be comparable between services provided by their banks in the US and the rest of the world. Secondly, based on our extensive experience, we tag each type of bank fee charge into homogeneous categories so that it can be easier for our clients to run various types of analysis. For example, a tag as to whether a cost relates to fund transfer fees, for example, or account maintenance fees, or information services, and so forth. The second service is our Hawkeye Reporting, which is our comprehensive service. Here, we collect the bank billing information directly from our clients' banks, and we use the Hawkeye tool so that we can provide our clients with all the relevant reports to ensure visibility and monitoring of their bank fees, as if the tool was used by their own staff internally. Finally, it is worth mentioning that for all our Hawkeye tool or service clients, we can provide a high-level bank fee benchmarking scorecard at agreed specific points in time to provide them with an indication on how their bank fees compare to market rates. On that note, I would like to pass you back to Emmanuel.
Yeah, thank you, Gael. Thank you, Dino. Maybe let me just change the slide. Yeah, I think that you've made your points during your presentation. Well, I understand that bank fees cannot be left unchecked. I also understand from you, Gael, that electronic bank fee statements become the norm in the banking industry, which is really good news. And from you, Dino, I understand that there's not only one way to monitor, I mean, to improve the process of bank fee monitoring. I mean, that it's not only having a software or nothing else, but that there are also other options. So I would like maybe to ask a last question to the audience before we start the Q&A session. How would you prefer to monitor your bank fees? Would you rather conduct your own analysis with a clean and enhanced raw data? Would you use a dedicated software or use a module for from your TMS? Or would you just have something very, very simple and regularly receive a comprehensive bank fee reporting? It looks like there is a game between the software and the TMS. There is one person from what I see. Let me just stop the survey and show you the results. So yes, clearly from what I see, there's a game between a dedicated software and a TMS module. And also 10% and 10% who are interested either in having the raw data, but very well structured, or on the other hand, just the service of I want a reporting, and so that I know where I go, but I don't want to dig into a new tool. Okay, I don't know what you guys think. Let me just look if we have received some questions. Yes. So maybe one first question for you, Gael. How do I find out which banks can send me electronic bank fee statements within my area?
I would say as a first step, we can give you feedback on the eligibility of your banks based on what we have in HawkeyeBSB and what we know. To do this, we just need to get from you the list of your bank country combinations. After that, you will have a good idea of what you will get, but in any case, you must to confirm this information with your banks, because perhaps you will have a good surprise and you will have more than expected.
Yeah, there was another question that I think that you have just answered. Can you share the list of banks that, from your experience, are able to provide usable bank fee statements? So answer is clearly yes.
No.
No?
No, we can't. And this is why the most important thing is to receive the perimeter, the bank country combination from the treasurer, so that we can analyze the list of bank and give and say if it's eligible to BSB file or not.
Yeah. So to me, the answer is yes.
Yeah, it's yes, but we cannot share all the banks we have in HawkeyeBSB. But we will do it with pleasure to answer to the client.
Two questions that are kind of the same. What is the business model of your three offers, or what pricing packages do you offer?
At the end, we try to make things simple, and each of them are built on the same business model. So you will have implementation fees at the beginning of the project. The implementation fees, sorry, will be calculated with your number of bank country combinations. And in addition of that, you will have quarterly fees independently of the number of users you will have. And it will be calculated based on the number of bank country combination also, and plus the number of bank accounts for each bank country combinations. And depending on the offer you will choose, the pricing will be different.
Maybe one question.
Sorry, Emmanuel, you sound your voice is not a bit faint. I can't.
Oh, okay. It's just because I'm shy sometimes, you know. Okay, what is your analysis and view of the bank fee module incorporated in TMS tools? And we had another question, which is also kind of the same. Can a TMS be used to monitor bank fees, or what's the difference with a dedicated software? And we saw that there was a game in the poll, so very interesting one.
Yeah, very interesting question, because I spotted, if I remember correctly, that about 45% of our audience is thinking of using the TMS. Actually, in my experience, the question as to whether a TMS can analyze bank fees, the quick answer is yes, it can. However, in my experience, it proves to be a little bit difficult. And if we really think about first principles, a TMS is usually built for a different purpose. So bank fee analysis is a nice to have. As a result, TMSs, in my experience, need the information to be fed into the system in a very specific way and in a rather inflexible way. And most of the times, most banks cannot provide the data in that format. So out of the clients that I have seen trying to analyze bank fees on their TMS, usually they have only managed to incorporate a small proportion of their bank fees, which in fact defeated the purpose of doing it. At the same time, in my experience, the modules of TMS tools that I have seen are by no means anywhere close to the functionality of the HawkeyeBSB. But at the end of the day, that's expected, because the HawkeyeBSB has been built specifically for bank fees. And as Gael analyzed earlier in the webinar, it is based on AFP codes. So all the tagging is done properly. So for example, if one bank calls a service with one name and another bank calls exactly the same service with another name, on the HawkeyeBSB, they're both under the same AFP code. So clients can compare and they can compare apples with apples. I think it is also worth mentioning about the intellectual property that we have within RedBridge on AFP codes. We are the only company which is recommended by the AFP to accredit banks on AFP codes. So you can imagine how much intellectual property has gone into the HawkeyeBSB tool in order to be able to effectively analyze bank fees, monitor bank fees, and eventually clients optimizing bank fees.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dino. There was, I see that there is another question, but I don't have the figures with me, so certainly, I can answer very briefly to it, but we will come back to the person who has asked the question by email, which was, how advanced are the very local banks, like the mutual banks, in terms of BSB files availability? And I think that this raises the debate of, well, which type of banks are able today to provide some BSB files. And during the presentation, I think that, Gael, you mentioned that in the US, which is the most advanced market in terms of BSB file availability, we add, on our platform, correct me if I'm wrong, out of the 49 banks sending BSB file, there were something like 30 plus, 38 of them, which were local banks. Of course, in other parts of the world, from what we see, but it's also linked to our client structure for certain geographical areas such as Africa at the moment, and based on our clients, it's mostly global, big, established cash management banks who will provide the BSB file. But if you go, for example, on, well, our markets, our banking markets, Europe, there's clearly a good mix of, let's say, 50-50 between local banks and global banks, especially in France, UK, Germany. So I think that clearly the trend is developing more and more to the smaller bank or more regional banks, local banks, in terms of BSB files availability. And I think, yeah, that was another question also related to that one. If you agree, because we are close to reaching the time, I would like to thank you, Dino. Thank you, Gael. Thank you for all the attendees of this webinar. I really hope that you liked it. I hope that you will forgive me for the little technical problem that we had at the very beginning of the webinar. We will come back to answer your question. I mean, all the questions that have not been addressed, we will come back to you and send you the answer by email, contact you back. Have a good day, have a good weekend, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.